The story begins with a boy named Kim, who was late on his first day of school. Before sending him to school, his mother, Yoon, packed his bag with a lot of heavy stuff to prevent him from flying away due to his special powers. Kim took his bag and boarded the bus, where he saw a girl named Jang running to catch the bus, which she missed. Kim managed to stop the bus and help Jang get on. However, Jang didn't have money for the bus ticket, so Kim paid for her. Suddenly, Kim felt his flying powers starting to activate. He tried hard to keep his feet on the ground to prevent his secret from being revealed. Later, in class, while everyone else was studying, Kim couldn't take his eyes off Jang, as he had a deep affection for her. Just looking at her made his feet lift off the ground again, and he had to tightly hold onto his desk to keep from floating away. Meanwhile, at the airport, we are introduced to Frank, a man who retrieved his mission equipment from a truck in the parking lot and disguised himself as a worker. It is revealed that Frank is a serial killer working for the Supernatural Control Agency, tasked with killing people with extraordinary powers and soul. After school, while the kids were heading home, a boy named Lee stopped Jang to show her the school gym since she had missed the campus tour. Teachers had assigned Lee to show Jang around the school. Meanwhile, Frank arrived at his first target, Jean Jin's office. Jean immediately realized Frank was an imposter. He confronted Frank in private and asked how he knew his real name. Frank admitted he had been hired by a company to kill him. Enraged, Jean used his incredible strength to bend a golf club like paper and attack Frank. Frank barely managed to defend himself, but Jean overpowered him, slamming him into a wall so hard that it broke. In the scuffle, Frank shattered Jean Jin's glasses, sending a shard of glass into his eye. Taking advantage of the moment, Frank stabbed Jean in the chest with a pin, killing him. He then disposed of Jean Jin's body by throwing it out of a window, completing his first task. He returned to his truck and sent a message confirming the task's completion. Elsewhere, Kim's mother, Yoon, was cleaning the house when she saw news reports about Jean Jin's murder. At the same time, Jang stayed late at school to study, aspiring to get into a prestigious college. However, the high tuition fees made her feel hopeless. When her father asked if she needed money, she lied and said she only needed enough to buy a school uniform. We are then introduced to Miho Young, the director of the National Security Agency. When he learned of Jean Jin's murder, his assistant remarked that such a thing seemed impossible. Still, she promised to try to suppress the news on social media. Miho, aware of the looming threat to individuals with special powers in the city, ordered his assistant to begin secret weapons training. That evening, Yoon prepared dinner for Kim. After eating, Kim went to bed, but thoughts of Jang consumed him. Lost in his thoughts, he ended up floating to the ceiling. Meanwhile, Yoon sat at her table, reassembling a hidden gun. Suspecting that Jean Jin's murder might be part of a larger conspiracy targeting other people with extraordinary powers. She reminisced about her past, when she had no place to live and used to carry young Kim on her back. A kind stranger once let them stay in an abandoned shed, which eventually turned into a successful restaurant to provide a better life for Kim. However, she forbade him from playing outside, fearing his powers might be exposed. Kim spent his childhood watching superhero cartoons on TV, which made him believe he was a superhero too. One day, Kim invited his school friends over and demonstrated his flying ability, delighting them and feeling happy to share his secret. Unbeknownst to him, the school principal saw everything. Later, one of Kim's friends tried imitating his flying but fell and got hurt. The school summoned Yoon and complained about Kim, forcing her to apologize. Realizing how much he had embarrassed his mother, Kim felt deeply sad and cried on the roof. Suddenly, the rope tied around his waist snapped, and he was swept away by the wind. At the last moment, Yoon arrived and saved him by pulling the rope with all her strength. The next day, Kim and Jang were late for school again, but the guard let them in because they were only a few seconds late. Meanwhile, Frank arrived at an old library, locked the door and confronted the owner, asking if he was once known as Bunk. Realizing he was in danger, the owner used his electrical powers to turn off all the lights. He removed a battery from his radio and began charging his energy, making his hair stand on end. Bunk then attacked Frank with powerful electric shocks. Frank defended himself with books, but was eventually overpowered. Bunk grabbed a photo from his desk and set it on fire, using his abilities to strangle Frank while giving him powerful shocks. Just as Frank was on the verge of death, he managed to fight back, throwing Bunk away and killing him with a single fatal strike. Looking at the burning photo, Frank saw that Bunk had a son, which filled him with sadness. He left the library and fled in his truck. Back at school, Jeng realized she smelled of sweat from running earlier and felt embarrassed. A boy named Bang teased her, looking at her school record and making fun of her gymnastic achievements. Lee intervened and told Bang to back off. Later, in the gym, Bang bothered Jeng again during her practice, but Lee stepped in and challenged Bang to meet him outside. Unbeknownst to them, a teacher was watching. Bang tried to attack Lee but was easily dodged and knocked to the ground. Furious, Bang grabbed a glass bottle to strike Lee, but Lee punched him so hard that Bang ended up hanging from a tree. It was then revealed that Lee also had extraordinary powers. Later, when a teacher asked about Bang's absence, Lee lied, saying Bang wasn't feeling well and went home early. Meanwhile, the news of Bunk's murder spread, making Yun even more worried about Kim's safety. That evening, Kim and Jeng went to a store to buy her a new uniform and then shared a meal together. Elsewhere, Frank was looking at Bunk's photo when he received orders to eliminate his next target. Back at school, Kim and Jeng were punished for being late by being assigned to clean the school washrooms, where they continued their conversation. During this time, Jeng noticed the injury on Kim caused by their collision that morning. She began to apply ointment to his wound, but Kim grew so shy from her proximity that he started floating off the ground. To hide his powers, he asked Jeng to leave the restroom, but even after she left, Kim couldn't control his abilities and started flying in the air. The next morning, the teacher once again asked about Bank's absence from school, but no one had any information. This made Lee very nervous. After school, when Kim returned home, his mother, Yun, scolded him for being late. Meanwhile, Frank had reached the school gate in search of his next target. The security guard told him to move his delivery truck away from the entrance, and Frank quietly left, but the guard grew suspicious and made a phone call. Days passed, and Jeng was training with her teacher in gymnastics to become a better athlete. During this time, Lee secretly watched Jeng practice because he had developed feelings for her. One night during practice, Jeng twisted her ankle and fell badly. Seeing her in pain, Lee ran toward her, but Kim also arrived at the same time, causing Lee to stop midway. In fact, upon seeing Jeng in pain, Kim had flown over to her instantly. However, Jeng reassured him that her injury wasn't serious and resumed her training. Now, she began doing exercises with Kim's help, but his proximity made Kim so nervous that he started flying again and landed far away. Jeng rushed to help him, but at that moment, a cleaner arrived and asked them to leave the gymnasium as he needed to clean. Kim agreed and left, but Jeng couldn't understand why Kim had suddenly flown and fallen. A while later, Lee entered the gym and approached the board where Jeng was practicing her jumps. In anger, he jumped so high that his foot left a mark on the wall. A few days later, in the evening, Jeng and Kim were eating at a shop when Jeng suddenly remembered she had left her sports shoes in the school gym. Kim said he was full and offered to retrieve them alone, but Jeng, suspicious of his actions for days, secretly followed him to uncover the truth. When she reached the school, she followed Kim's footprints and recalled all the moments she had seen him flying. She reached the second floor, but the footprints disappeared. She called out for Kim, who soon returned. Jeng asked him why he behaved so strangely whenever they were close. Kim denied anything unusual and said he was just naturally like that. Later, as Kim searched his bag for something, Jeng noticed his bandage was about to come off. She tried to fix it, but her touch made Kim so shy that he flew into the air and stuck to the ceiling. Jeng was stunned but quickly figured out a way to help him. She climbed onto a box, jumped toward Kim, and pulled him down with her. She handed him his heavy bag, and everything returned to normal. They left the school, unaware that the security guard had seen everything through the camera. At home, Yun was cooking dinner when she saw Kim return with Jeng. She was delighted because it had been a long time since Kim brought a friend home. She invited Jeng to stay for dinner. Meanwhile, Frank went to a beauty salon where he met a girl named Hong, whom he called by her real name, Natsu. Hearing this, Natsu immediately attacked Frank with scissors. Frank, however, stood up and slammed her to the ground. It was revealed that Frank's body could heal any wound within moments. As he removed the scissors from his face, Natsu fired bullets at him and ran into another room. She grabbed a large gun and used her X-ray vision to locate Frank through the walls. She started shooting furiously. Frank charged at her and smashed through the wall, but Natsu continued firing at him. Realizing the bullets had no effect, she quickly went to the kitchen and grabbed a special gun. She then shot at the pipes, causing gas to leak. Using the smoke as cover, she fired a barrage of bullets. Despite being hit, Natsu managed to grab her shotgun and landed a powerful blow, throwing Frank into a shelf. Frank hid in a corridor to allow his powers to heal his wounds. Once healed, he emerged with renewed energy, dodged Natsu's shots, and attacked her with a kick that sent her flying. He began strangling her, but she stabbed him in the leg with scissors and tried to slash his throat. However, Frank stopped her and asked why people with special powers were hiding their children. Despite being on the verge of death, Natsu refused to reveal the truth, calling him a mere killer and saying the gangs would finish him off as soon as they saw him. Angered, Frank stabbed her in the neck with the scissors and killed her. He remarked that even if she didn't tell him where the children were, their parents would show up at her funeral. Meanwhile, Kim and Jeng were eating in his room when Kim once again floated to the ceiling. Jeng helped him down again. Later, as Jeng left for home, Yoon saw her leave alone and scolded Kim for letting her go by herself. She insisted he take her home immediately. Using his powers, Kim quickly reached Jeng's house, and she was happy to see him. The next day, Kim joined Jeng for her practice session, where Jeng revealed she hadn't left her previous school voluntarily. She had been expelled after beating up 17 girls at once. One day, in her former school, a classmate of hers was being bullied and humiliated by other girls. This enraged Jeng, who challenged all of them to a fight after school. In the evening, as the students gathered to watch, 17 girls attacked Jeng simultaneously. However, Jeng, possessing extraordinary strength, remained unfazed and retaliated, breaking their bones one by one. After defeating them, she approached their leader, who tried to scare her with her high heels. The leader attempted to attack Jeng, but soon realized her efforts were futile. Out of fear, the leader screamed. At that moment, her boyfriend arrived and attacked Jeng with a baseball bat, knocking her to the ground. But Jeng picked up a stone and hit his leg, then used the bat to strike his head. Following this incident, Jeng was expelled from school, and her father had to resolve the matter with the authorities. Meanwhile, the National Security Agency was making every effort to conceal the existence of mutants from the public. In the final scenes, the son of the mutant with electrical powers was seen searching for his father's killer, determined to avenge his death. The boy, like his father, also possessed special powers. The first season of this series ends here. The next season hasn't been released yet, so don't flood the comments asking for it. See you in the next video.